And we're live. How are you, George?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. How are you?
I'm fantastic, George. Thank you so much for coming over.
Yeah.
You traveled 20 minutes from where?
From Canggu, from right by the beach.
There you go. We are here still in Bali. Fantastic, beautiful Bali. It's hot today. As last 3-4 months after the rainy season was over. I didn't even notice. Did you notice that rainy season all of a sudden was just like, oh wow, we have more sun?
It's just eternal summer here, honestly.
It's just so great. I did some surfing this morning. It was good. Do you surf?
Sometimes.
Okay. Are you good?
I'm all right. I catch at least a handful each time I go out.
Nice. Okay, guys, anyone who is listening to this podcast is called A Collection of Blueprints. And today my pleasure is to have here George Mason Lantay. Did I say it right?
That's right.
Yes. I met George about 4 weeks now ago on the festival called a Bloom Festival. And George was one of the speakers at a TED Talks workshop. And George was talking about some amazing things, and we will talk about them a little bit later. But I would like to start tell me about yourself. Where you're from, about where you were raised, a little bit of your childhood, about your parents, brothers, sisters. Go.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here in your epic studio, the epic lifestyle, and the way that you're just interviewing all the amazing people here. So it's a pleasure.
Thank you, man.
And yeah, so my journey started in New York City, and I was there for the first 5 years of my life. And, my journey really started with, a bit of the struggles in the family, right?
Okay.
There's a good amount of darkness definitely on my father's side, but on my mother's side as well, and both super incredible people, and both of them who really did a lot in their own lives to be able to, overcome their circumstances and start to step into, healthier patterns. And I feel like, the way that my life has really evolved has been a result of that, and it has been a result of just really allowing myself to see all of that and really being able to feel all of that, right?
Can you tell more about the challenges what your parents were facing? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on my father's side, just, a good amount of abuse, whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse. There's a long military line, and so there was a lot of that trauma that's stored in the body and that is passed down through different generations and that is expressed in different ways. And for my mom, not quite as intense of a story as my father's line, but definitely also, grew up in the South, moved out to New York City to become a dancer, really had that journey of finding her expression and everything that she does.
And you follow your mom's footsteps, so now you're a dancer.
Well, I'd say I followed both their footsteps, actually. I think that's the beauty and the perfection of all of it.
I did see you dancing on the Bloom Festival.
Yeah.
You have some moves. You have some moves.
Oh, there's definitely the artistic side with sort of that, my brand, right? It's the heroes of purpose. And it's that, I feel like that was the biggest thing that my father really took away from his childhood and that he was really working to step into with his life.
Right.
Is, how can he actually do good in the world and actually, make a difference. And he was the type of person, not a perfect father, but he would see someone in need, like some sort of fire happening, and he would be with me and he would leave me in McDonald's to go and try to save that person.
And
right?
rescue that person and come pick you up 2 weeks later.
that type of person.
I did have a son. Yeah. So Lantay, is that Italian?
Yeah, that's a very great question. So my family on my father's side is traced back to Hungary, and I believe Italian from there.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit Italian to me.
Yeah.
I'm not specialist in that. Oh, Hungary. Have you been Hungary?
I have. Hungary? Yeah, I've been to Budapest.
Beautiful country.
Yeah.
Did you go to Budapest?
Yeah, super beautiful place, and it's the Ottoman Empire migration. So out from Rome. I feel like I have the Roman nose whenever I'm doing any of my, whether it's freestyles or artworks or all that.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like it's got that core vibe to it. So.
And then that's your dad's side. What about your mom?
My mom's family is from England and from Ireland.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So you have Irish blood as well.
Yeah, a bit.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Any siblings?
Only child.
Wow, you got it all. You got all the tension. And then about your school days. So you grew up in New York.
Yeah, so I was in New York until I was 5 years old, and then I moved down to North Carolina and in Chapel Hill, which is a university town. And my mom wanted us to be closer to where she grew up in Charlotte and also just be around good school systems.
I think when we had a chat, I told you that I actually went to North Carolina and I went to Kill Devil Hill. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, I think you might have mentioned that. Yeah.
I was like, it was a very random place, but that's the girl I used to see. She used to live there, so I went to see her. How is it to live in North Carolina?
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, for Chapel Hill, it's very much it's like a university bubble surrounded by a very southern area, and so within all of that, it's a very intellectual place. People have very, you know, sort of North American liberal values, and yeah, it has, you know, not the best schools in my opinion. I feel like all schools sort of teach that more employee mindset, not as much that creator mindset, not as much that entrepreneurialism. However, definitely, you know, I was empowered to think for myself and to, you know, be creative in certain degrees. So yeah,
what did you study in university? What was your subject?
Psychology and business psychology.
Psychology, that makes sense.
Yeah. All about the transformation.
That's awesome. And you did bachelor's degree. Did you do master's degree as well?
So I made my own master's degree. I went off and traveled the world right afterwards.
All right. So you did after master's degree, or sorry, after your bachelor degree.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So you studied 4 years in university.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I did 7. I got my MBA degree in business. Jesus Christ, it's such a waste of time. But met a lot of cool people. What do you think about, and it's interesting that you touched upon that your university wasn't really empowering like a free spirit and mind of like think on yourself and be more creative, and they were like preparing the not blue collar workers, but workers, you know, like lawyer, be a business owner, not business owner, but mainly work for someone else, for corporations. So what do you think about in general kind of educational system? Because part of me thinks if you would just have, just like they were talking about Good Will Hunter, remember there's a piece when they said all you need is have a library card and you can get all those books and read if you're interested and you can learn them, instead of, especially America, go and pay all that money. Like, how much did your university cost you?
My university was about $25,000.
$25,000 altogether. So that was pretty cheap. That's very cheap in States, isn't it? So it's very lucky. But you know how it is in the rest of the States. There's so many, they get out of university with $60,000, $70,000 debt. So what I'm trying to probably ask you, what would be the alternative? Instead of having this is the way it is now, educational system, what do you think would be a good alternative?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I feel like the value of specifically the university system right now is much more that it has that whole ecosystem and that whole community around it. And when we look at urban design, right, one of the areas I studied in university when I went over to Copenhagen to study abroad in Denmark is, you know, this idea of mixed use design. And in universities, they really embody that, right? They have the, you know, the dining right next to the housing, right next to the school buildings, right next to where people are working, right next to literally every single area of life. And it's all connected through quads, through grass, through these beautiful areas. And what that enables is, it enables, at least at the university I ended up attending, is a really vibrant culture and a really vibrant culture of innovation and empowerment in these different ways. And so that's the amazing part. The unfortunate part is that what we actually end up studying is not the most useful, right? And it ends up being, you know, all of these subjects that we go into, you know, studying, you know, history and mathematics and concepts that are definitely useful, definitely valued, however, not super central to what are actually the big problems in the world and how can we each individually really do something about it. And it was pretty amazing actually just how little, right? Because I was sort of in the business school, but I wasn't like a full business student. So especially in the College of Arts and Sciences, they don't really do the preparation for work in general, right? They don't really train you to do that sort of thing. And you almost need to do other programs to make that happen. But even more than that, it just really doesn't teach the fundamentals of business and of small business, which I think is so important. Like even for me going in and studying entrepreneurship, right, at UNC, which is one of the top 20 entrepreneurship schools in the country, it's like they didn't even teach us what sales was. It was literally like almost a year into doing business that I actually realized I actually need to learn how to have these conversations to be able to enroll people. They barely talked about what marketing was, right? It was like these most important, most fundamental parts of business they don't go into, and they really just went into, you know, tech entrepreneurship, which is almost like getting a job from an investor, which I thought was quite funny. And same with the psychology world, right? It's like they teach the, you know, the textbook psychology, but being in the transformational world, the way that I am, it's like that's actually such a simple way of looking at psychology, right? It's just a conversation. It's the conversation from a very limited mindset, and the different tools, the different techniques, whether it's embodiment techniques, whether it's different, practices that people can enter into, or just also different ways of having conversations and holding that space for that logical and that emotional and that action-oriented journey for people. It's literally just 100 times more effective, like not even joking, than it was at the college I went to, which is actually ranked as the #1 clinical psychology school. And so it's really just amazing. The world is just full of, it's basically just networks of people and networks of people. And the reality is that a lot of these codes, a lot of these really deep codes around business and around life and the most important things in the world have traditionally been passed down through families, right? Through families who are giving their empires to their heirs. And that's really where that information is. And now it's starting to be, this is why I do coaching and why I love the coaching world, because we can transmit those very, very deep codes, but nobody even talks about anything like that in the university or in the school system. And that's why, in Bali, especially in the communities I'm in, there's this idea of people waking up, which is when we wake up, we start to realize, number one, just how much we can do with our lives, but also just the power that we have to be able to have so much more access to creativity, have so much more access to the inner genius that all of us have that so few of us actually end up unlocking. And we can actually wake up to just how life can literally be anything we want it to be. Right?
George, I like the way we just kind of went through. So I was like, I want to say something. I want to go a little bit back to the business, and I totally agree what you were talking about. That we talk so much about theoretical concepts instead of actually, how do we do sales? How do we do marketing, like for small businesses, or how do we start small businesses? And because I started business as well, and then the idea was that most of the things we're talking about, they were so theoretical, and I was like, it was even difficult to understand what the hell are we studying about. And then I got my 4 years degree, and I'm like, what did I do there? And I was very lucky in some sense. So my parents couldn't afford to support me, so I started working from the year one. And then because I was straight away in sales, straight away in marketing, and then was like, oh, that's why we study this. Then you have the practical application. But there's some students who go from year 1 to year 7, and they got their master's degree, and they never had a practical application. Well, MBA is different. You have to have a practical practice, and you have to work and stuff. But people get out of the university, it was like, oh, this how do you do marketing? How do you do sales? And then, I agree to what you said. But then also about psychology. So could it be the factor of that they really did not have experience that this is how you can apply, and that was the reason why they wouldn't teach you these kind of different ways? Because what you do in Bali now, and it's such a small community and small number of people who actually do and apply psychology and this knowledge the way you do it. Would you say that those professors who used to teach you, whatever, they just did not know that that's a possibility to do it?
It's a really good question. It's actually very intriguing to me why psychology as a field and as a science is so behind, which is the way I really see it. Like, I look at the community of people that I'm in, and I look at psychology, I'm like, wow, like psychology is literally like 100 years behind a lot of this. And I feel like a lot of it might be just this strict separation from religion, actually. And it's very interesting because, if you look at psychology and you look at, so basically my journey started, and it started in personal growth. It started after I had a big fallout with a group of friends, and I was like, okay, I need to work on myself.
When was that? How long ago?
That was when I was 15.
15. How old are you now?
Yeah, I'm 26 now.
26, okay.
Yeah.
And 11 years ago, I calculated this. I did the business school.
Yeah. And so at that time, I was like, okay, I really need to work on myself. And I, was trying different types of like personal development on Google, and it wasn't really leading me on a very good path. I was just sort of getting, just very hard on myself. And so I found psychology. I was like, okay, it's evidence-based. I can trust it. Right. And then as I started to study that more and more, I started to realize about, emotional intelligence, right? It's not just about, trying to find these patterns of the mind and align to that. That's sort of sociopathic, actually. That's sort of what social psychology tries to focus on. It's not very useful for personal development, actually, even though I was trying to use it for that. And
emotional intelligence.
Yeah, emotional
What's
intelligence.
What's the definition, and how would you explain it? What is emotional intelligence?
So emotional intelligence is our ability to utilize our full body as a brain. Because the thing is, if we look at the way our brain processes logically, right, we can only process like a few things per second. But our emotions are actually processing so many bits of information all the time. Like every single cell in our body is receiving information. And so that's why we can see someone and immediately get a hit about, you know, what they're about, or we feel it in our gut, or we feel it in our heart, what sort of decisions we want to make. And so the emotions are actually the key to that inner genius. And when those start to be unlocked, that's when everything actually starts to flow in all sorts of ways. And that's when you see, you know, people like Steve Jobs and anyone who's done like anything amazing in their lives, they always have actually that really deep emotional connection. You could call it like a really deep spiritual connection. And it's those emotions that are channeling through them that allow them to accomplish these great feats. And if you look at the study of emotional intelligence, what I realize is it's all coming from Buddhism right now, right? I would read these books and I'd be like, wow, these, you know, practices that are the most advanced practices that people are finding in emotional intelligence, they're actually just very simple Buddhist meditations. And if you're looking at the people who are actually translating these, they actually are like Buddhists themselves, and they're just bringing that into psychology. And so when I started doing theirs, I started experimenting with other religions. I would even look at, you know, there's like yoga, of course, and these Eastern religions that are easy to look at. However, even looking at Christianity, right? Even looking at Western religions and seeing, you know, at the fundamental level, what are people really doing in these groups? Like, what are the rituals and what are the ceremonies that are happening? And, you know, what's really the fabric of everything that's happening there? And in the worlds that I'm in, right, people are able to explore this and they're able to translate this into the modern day, and they're able to see, okay, what's the fundamental nature of what's happening, and how can we create, like, how can we, first of all, look back towards what people were doing thousands of years ago in shamanic communities and yogic communities and different native tribes, and then also how can we bring that into what we're doing today. And what we find is, you know, actually the most advanced forms of psychology, they all stem from these practices, because psychology is 100 years old, but a lot of these ancient practices, they are thousands of years old, and they're actually, that's where the wisdom of how to develop the mind is. And the work that I'm really interested in is how can we take that to the next level? How can we take these ancient practices and actually modernize them? Because that is the cultivation of the inner garden. It's like in the modern world, we're so focused on what we're creating on the outside, but what we have to realize is that it's actually, we can start from creating from the inside and then say, okay, what is the life that we really want to create? What is the best world we can really imagine, and really align our emotions and align our intentions and align all of our relationships on the inside. And that's what allows the best world we can imagine to be created on the external. And these are, I call them the royalty codes, because this is like really, really deep work that people are thinking about in these noble families that so many people in the world just don't even know are a thing. And that even these noble families, they have these codes because they've had them for generations, but they don't even necessarily know how to cultivate them. And so that's the power of transformational work, and that's the power of the work that myself and the people in my community do, is that we actually have, you know, these ways to actually cultivate that genius from that core level, and how to actually empower people. Like literally any problem that people have, and I'm not even exaggerating on this, can be solved through transformational work, because everything on the external is a reflection on what is in the internal. And it's really quite hilarious how nobody is talking about this in the world with all these issues that we have. Nobody is talking about, okay, like what are the transformational practices that we're doing? How are we meditating? How's this person's emotions? And if they are, they're looking at very logically and very judgmentally. But really, if Congress took a moment to meditate, to align, to breathe, to tap into like what's really happening, and to be really authentic in that way, maybe even did some embodied practices to move that emotion and that energy around, we would be able to come to decisions a lot faster and a lot more effectively. And I really believe that this is the next renaissance. This is the next transformational psychological revolution, where when all of these practices come to be, that's actually when we're going to see great change in every single area of the world.
Why do you think that there's so much skepticism, especially from like I'm guessing from government or from like higher powers in any countries or in the world. Is this something about they're afraid that they're gonna have a lot of happy people and they're gonna start doing what they actually want to do instead of following the directions and following the orders, and they will be more free-minded? Because in many ways, like especially if the government or the country is very strong about their military, like we want to have a strong military. So if they're going to have more mentally well-aligned people who are going to say what they think, and there's going to be less people who say, "Oh, I'm going to go and fight in wars for you," and things like that.
Yeah,
does that make any sense?
It's a really good question. I love that you bring that up too, because you're right. It's a much bigger thing that's at play, and what we're talking about here is it's belief transformation. And it's like religions and governments, they serve to help and to elevate people, and they also, hold people in a place. They hold people in a certain container. And so when people start having these new realizations, these new beliefs, it's like, this is the type of thing that disrupts and that creates great change. And, this is the sort of thing that different movements are built off of, right? And so, yeah, it's a really big thing. And for people who are in power in the moment, that's of course always a scary thing. And it's a scary thing. There are the reasons that are just self-centered, where people are like, oh, like unconsciously or consciously, like I want to stay in power, so I'm going to, like try to prevent this in whatever ways. But there's also, it's chaotic, right? When power starts to shift, it starts to be chaotic, especially, when people start to think of, these really elevated concepts and start to break out of their national identities, and they start to have these international identities. It's really confronting.
It's totally different kind of animal straight away. I can say that for myself, and people you can hear me as well. It's like, oh, I'm from France, I'm from Germany, I'm from Spain, but they're so different from the people who actually live in those countries. Like when someone says like, you're Latvian, that's where I'm from. It's like, yes, that's where I'm from, but I don't identify myself anymore like that. It was like, oh, so you're not patriot. Well, first of all, yes, I never probably been a patriot. But the other thing is like, I identify myself with just being a human and being on planet Earth and connecting with all these people. Why would we need to stick so much on, oh, I'm American, I'm Canadian, or to that identity? And then there's some people who say to me as well, oh, I feel like I lost my identity. It's like, just because you're not so much Spanish anymore or so much Chinese anymore, that's why you lost your identity? Isn't our identity, that's what we are, who we are? What do you think?
Yeah, it's very fascinating. And we live in such an interesting community here in Bali, and it really is revolutionary what's happening, because there's people from all corners of the world coming together. And, there's it's for me, something that's very fascinating is just looking at the ancient, prophecies and religions of all sorts of cultures, because we dismiss that sort of thing now. But when we tap into how profound it actually is and how much thought and contemplation those cultures actually put into all of this, and we can see beyond like, oh, they had these logical fallacies, and we really feel into the emotions of it and like what was being cultivated through that, we realize the profoundness of it. And there's this prophecy from the Hopi tribe of South America that says that when the world is dying, the people from all cultures will come together to share the wisdom together, and they will create a new earth. Yeah,
instead of keeping to themselves. Like there's always this competition, the Cold War, or any other little country. I was just recently watching some documentaries about Cold War and what was happening. I actually finally found out what it was Cold War. I didn't really know. I thought they were actually fighting. All they did, it was just who is going to be better, and that's it. And that's why I watched the conspiracy theory about that Americans never landed on the moon.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know about that sort of thing. I like to focus on what's in front of us and what's like what we can actually utilize. Yeah. It's like even with the COVID situation right now, it's like conspiracy. I don't know, maybe, but like all I know is that we could use a lot more holistic health in the conversation. If we use even a fraction of that money that's being spent towards, the ways it's being spent, and we just said, hey, we're just going to empower everyone to eat healthily. We're going to empower everybody to learn the very basics of, ways to be mindful and ways to be present and ways to have good relationships. And if we were like, hey, everybody go outside and get some fresh air and like start, having healthy movement in their lives, problem would be solved way faster, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So Yeah.
It's one of those. It's just you ask that question. So why no one is doing anything about it? I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan, and Joe says like, why there's no government officials go and say, people exercise, people eat healthy, people, but instead it's just like, no, sit at home, put the mask on. That's it. And so yeah, I do have a little struggle. I think that's the first segment for us, and we're gonna be back in a second. We're back. So first segment was a very informational. When George started talking, it's just like goes like flies. The bullets are flying. I was like catching, missing. So let's talk about you being a coach. And now tell me please about the program, what you've been starting, how long it's been since you are kind of started this program, and tell me about your coaching experience and your journey. How did you start it?
Absolutely. So I'm the founder of Heroes of Purpose, which is a movement to empower...
Say it with a pride. Heroes of Purpose.
Which is a movement that empowers transformational leaders to create the best worlds they can imagine. And so my journey with all of this really started 3 years ago. And it started when I became an entrepreneur full-time. And I had this vision of this better world that I could imagine. And so for about 2 years of that journey, I started a series of different transformational companies, and 4 of them were successfully launched. A lot of them were not successfully launched. And each one was really moving towards this vision with different types of business models. Mm-hmm. So I first started with an online program that combined mindfulness with software development, because I was in the software development world. And I wanted people to be able to create while also being mindful, while also having that beautiful lifestyle, instead of being, stuck in Silicon Valley and really in really unhealthy conditions psychologically, even though they're creating cool stuff. And from there, it elevated into life coaching. From there, it elevated into a bit of early on business coaching. And I even launched a co-working co-living villa in that time.
Those are quite big. For those who don't know, here in Bali, there's a lot of co-working spaces. So a lot of people gather together, and mainly they work independently, but it's a kind of a nice community to see that not everyone is just surfing and enjoying weather. They're actually working as well. And but did you work, or did you practice as a life coach yourself before that? So how long did you do that?
It's a great question. So I've actually been working in the transformational world for about 10 years. So I started in the leadership development space. I was teaching Taekwondo. That had a very big leadership development
Yes, you did mention about Taekwondo. There you go, martial arts. Woo!
Yeah, and then different types of leadership development work. So this is all in other companies, but it was, geared towards team building, geared towards, people just being able to do that sort of inner work in that more basic sort of personal reflection way. And I would do that for corporations, for nonprofits, for educational groups. And I was also very into, dance and yoga and teaching that sort of stuff. So 3 years ago is when I really started working on my projects full time. And the work that I do now, the reason it's so profound to me is everything we were talking about earlier, right? I really believe that people who have these codes, these transformational knowledge of how people can go through these journeys from a place of darkness to a place of light, whether that's in their health, whether that's in their relationships, whether that's in, their purpose. And when they can really inspire people to be able to step into that next chapter, like we were talking about on the break, it's like that is the core of value, right? It's like we buy things to be able to have, certain results at the cores of our life, right? We buy a new car and maybe it's so we can, feel better about ourselves or have that better relationship. But really what you're wanting is to feel good about yourself and to have that good relationship. And so that's the power that transformational leaders have. And so many of them, because they're so focused on that emotional side, they don't understand the structural component, right? And they also don't understand the emotional side of business specifically, which is what's really interesting to me, is how can we actually break down what's happening when we are doing business with people, especially for people where they are doing this deep transformational work for people, where they're really changing people's lives and bringing them into programs when they're changing people's lives. There's very specific ways to be able to create those relationships and to be able to structure everything so that people can actually step into those programs.
So you basically came up with this kind of so you say movement, but it's like a certain type of a program which helps these transformational coaches. Am I getting it right? You don't really like when I say a life coach. Is that
So I'm more of a business coach than a life coach.
No. But you work with life coaches though.
I work with people who are life coaches, people who are somatic facilitators, people who are different types of.
Is there a difference between
coaches.
life coach and transformational coach?
It's a great question. So for me, life coach is a specific type of, like, people often get certifications in life coaching, right? And it's, they sort of look at different areas of people's life. For a transformational coach, the reason I like to use that word is because they generally come from their own journey in a very specific area, whether that's health, whether that's their relationships.
Right.
And it's just sort of, it also points to the fact that for me, right now the program that I offer is a coaching program. However, the movement that I offer is doing much bigger work in the world, right? And there's different aspects of that movement, right?
But this coaching program for who?
For me? Or for
No. So who are your potential clients, customers? Is that?
Yeah. So I work with life coaches. I work with health coaches, relationship coaches, people who do various sort of meditation work, yoga, all that sort of work.
And you basically help them to figure out how to do their business right, or how to improve their business module, which is it about how to manage the finances and things like that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we empower them to grow their business in alignment. So in a way that feels really, really good. And so we take them through a process to be able to do that, right? The first step is to be able to establish their life-changing value, which is really around their own skills. It's around their vision, and it's around who their ideal clients are and how they can really serve them.
Because some of them you probably find, like, just like there's very talented people out there, like artists, incredible performers, but they don't really know how to market themselves. They don't know how to really tell the rest of the world, this is who I am, and please, enjoy my talent. So some of these life coaches, transformational coaches, they have such an amazing intentions, and they're actually amazing people to talk to, and they can help so many people, but they don't really know how to kind of have an order and how to make it work.
Exactly. There's all the structure, there's the systems, there's the delegation, there's bringing in people consistently, and there's also simply being able to stand and communicate and just have, again, that essence, that inner essence, be able to really be the types of people that people actually want to lead them through these big transformational experiences.
That's awesome, man. That is a really great thing, because I met in my life some people who I would call mentors, without even them knowing that they are mentors. So when you have a conversation with them, you just like all of a sudden realize, okay, so my life could be much better, or I'm actually not that bad, or I'm gonna strive for being a better person. And these people can help, but then if someone who is actually doing this professionally, then some of them are like thrown in deep end. So how do I do this? Because most of them maybe done 8 to 5 jobs all their lives and did this on the side, and now they're like, how do I do it viable? How do I support my family with this kind of stuff? And this is where you come in. That's great. So you said like the four attempts or four businesses didn't work. What was the story there?
Yeah. So 4 of the businesses I made did work, and a lot of them didn't work. And when they didn't work, this is also part of why I'm so passionate about being able to lead people through these journeys is, when we don't have that roadmap, we can spend so much time, creating our website or tweaking our website, or, just selling our programs in a way where we just aren't actually either giving or receiving as much as we could be. So lots of those different circumstances that happen.
But it's one of the greatest things to learn. When someone says failure, that's horrible. Failure is actually the way you learn, and I mean everyone knows that now. But before that, back in the days, it was failure. No, that's horrible. Was it Richard Branson who said out of 10 businesses, 1 is going to work? So all you need to do is to fuck up with 9 other businesses, and then the number 10th is going to work.
Yeah, or hire a business coach.
There you go. Oh, hire a business coach. Here you go. So you don't have to learn from your own mistakes. You can learn from other people's mistakes. That's a good point. Okay. So what else can you tell me about your movement and what you're doing? Any interesting upcoming news, or so for viewers who are listening, watching this?
Yeah, so absolutely. So any viewers who feel like they are coaches or are, leaning towards that path, I would absolutely love for us to have a conversation, right? And for you to be able to explore this more, because it really is such a beautiful world, and it's so nice to be able to have that sort of model from the start. So the type of work that I do, right, is it really takes you from the beginning of the journey all the way to the end in growing your business, and helps you avoid those different mistakes, that I made and that so many people make. So I've already talked about the part of really establishing that life-changing value. It also goes into how to actually enroll people into high-end programs, which is really just a business model that I've found after so many different transformational companies that allows you to actually give way more value to the people that you serve, while it also taking a lot less of your time.
Right.
And there's really amazing ways that we can do that. So for my business, I actually only have to work 7 hours a week if I choose to, and I make 5 figures a month doing what I do.
Efficiency,
right?
baby.
So it's really, really nice, and enables you to have those life-changing conversations with people. And finally, again, it's that part of being able to actually have that consistent stream of people coming in, and being able to set up the systems and the delegation to be able to allow all of that to happen. And more than anything else, it's really enabling your business to be a celebration, right? Your business to be fully aligned. There's all these, I have what I call it's like the hero business ladder. And there is the most basic form of business, which just makes money. Right? And then there's the form of business that makes money and actually provides a service to someone, right? Because there's business that doesn't provide a service. It's just like, clickbait, or just like selling ads that don't help people.
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah, that's true. Touche.
Next one, I'm gonna have a crypto guy here for it.
Touche. And then there's a layer where it's giving a service and it's actually helping people, right? It's not just like, some sort of candy that's gonna make people not feel very good. It's actually something that's good for them. And then it's actually good for the environment, right? So it actually has good packaging. It's made in a beautiful way. And then there's the top layer, which is that's actually moving towards the best world you can imagine. And that's why I like to focus on. That's why I think that transformational leadership is so revolutionary. And that's why I call it different from being a life coach. Is, for me, the embodiment of my business is literally everything that I love doing. So everything that I love doing, I've been able to structure into my business in a way that's literally creating the best world that I can imagine, right? I see, this world that looks like, a college campus, and that has people creating innovative products that are good for health, and being able to celebrate life at the same time, and using the emotion and the energy that's cultivated from that celebration to be able to create even more, and people being able to align more and more towards relationships that are loving and bountiful through, different transformational work, while also being able to create the structures to be able to have all of that on the outside and have all those services they need. And, this is the world that I want my children to live in. This is the world that I want to pass to the next generations. And that's really what I do in my work. And that's what I empower my clients to do as well, is to not only build their businesses, but to really build their legacies, and to really be in that full alignment with everything that they desire to be in their lives.
Hallelujah, brother.
Yeah. And so if that's you, if you're listening to this and you feel resonant with that, what I actually do is I love to have what I call an aligned business session with people. And in that process, basically what I do, and this is a totally free call, and I just take them through, I show them like, okay, where you are now and where do you desire to be, right? And being able just to have that clarity on that gap is so incredibly powerful. And then we can have a conversation, and I can map out a strategy, if it seems like I can help, of how could you actually get there? How could you actually get these results that you're looking for? And at the end, if we want to chat about working together, if it seems like a good fit, we can do that. But this sort of thing, these sorts of call to actions are so important, right? Because I was listening to podcasts for years and years and years, right? Not realizing that I could actually meet the people who are on them, right? That I could actually talk.
Because you think they're like super celebrities or something.
I could actually talk to every single one of these people, and that I could actually, be able to plunge into that world. And that's really, the amazing thing about the world that we live in. And that's the amazing thing about the sort of coaching work that I do, is we're actually able to elevate each other and say like, oh, well, you want to be like this person? It's not like, oh, there's that popular kid in high school where it's like, oh, I'll just never be like that person. No, it's like that popular kid in high school being like, yo, dude, I have a program, you can join it. It's like, you can have like all of the things that you admire about me. Those are actually available to you as well. So I'd super encourage you to take action on that. You can find me on Instagram, George Mason Lantay, and you can just send me a message that you listen to this, and I'll go ahead and I'll send you my scheduling info. You can book on my calendar super easily. We can have that conversation. And
awesome. And I'm going to put also
power.
all your contact details on under the video and anywhere we're going to post this.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, and also that's regarding the limited beliefs. I learned this when I did my training as a coach, I did a little bit. And it's one of the biggest ones when you just said that, I'm never going to be the most popular kid in the school. I'm never going to be the most good looking or whatever. And that's limited beliefs what we built. And we just kind of create that little cage and sit there, I'm never going to do this, never going to do that. And since I was a kid, I was always like, no, I'm going to prove you. Fuck you. I'm going to prove you that I can do it. And then sometimes it worked, sometimes didn't. I went to university to study business, mainly because my math teacher said that I'm never going to get in there. And I was like, you know what? I will prove you wrong. But then I kind of look back, I maybe lost 7 years of my life. Oh, maybe not. Okay, so let's have this. We have about 6 more minutes. What are we going to do now? So when I met George in Bloom Festival, we did a little performance there. And so the teams, we were all divided in teams, and we did all sorts of amazing, cool stuff and fun stuff, and scavenger hunt, and all sorts of competitions and dodgeballs. But one of the things what was considered to be pretty much the biggest event was the, what do they call them? Musical. We had to prepare a musical, and my team prepared musical. We just did little dancing and stuff, but George's team was incredible. So what you guys did, you had the whole performance. So the girls started with the singing and everything, and then George smashed was it totally what's that, freelance rap when you don't have it, it's not prepared, what do you call it?
So
freestyle.
Completely freestyled. And not only that, but that track I actually had my producer prepare for that festival. So that's like on the next level, right?
Are you serious?
It's like beyond the playground. It's like the playground, and then you have your team that's helping with the game.
That's insane. So anyways, long story short, George did his freestyle rap. Everyone just went mental because it was insane. So what he's gonna do now, he's gonna do a little performance for us, and this is your own track.
This is my own track, and this will be all freestyle. This will be for you all specifically.
Boom. Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
All right, let's do it.
I can't wait.
Oh, wait. Let's go ahead and make sure this is pumping.
Oh yeah, you're gonna turn on the boom.
speaker.
Yeah. There you go. This is. How often do you do this? This is almost like meditation for you.
This is a meditation for me. Exactly. Gets me super hype. All right, let's do this. Seeing us elevating, the vibes that we are raising, everything we can do to make life amazing. This is how we're saying, everything we want to see, this is how we create like it's our reality. Everything that we dream can be, the imagination that we choose to see. This is our world, yeah, we do make it. Everything in this life, we do create it. So take it and see what is. See as you can step into more of that bliss you can uplift and show people the mission, the vision you have, how you can be uplifting. Everybody just shifting to a higher place so we can be living in that higher way. Just see that new day. This is how we bring the new paradigm, making our game.
What you gonna say? What you gonna say? A collection of blueprints here, people. Let's collect them blueprints. Sick, dude.
Yeah, I'll do one more.
Yeah. Come on.
This is out to the youth in the university, the people who are trying to find their way. Everything as we make, seeing what can take. Everything as we do create, yeah. Seeing what you want to do, everything that you are here to prove, everything that you are here to be. Just seeing how you can raise that frequency, just calling the new vibes, bringing in the time. Seeing everything, know that you are divine, and everything your mind can inspire. Everybody just setting fire to the heart within. Everybody just burning, seeing everything that we all are deserving. Everybody just learning the codes as we let it guide us back to our home. Yeah, we find that unflow, feel everything just so influential. This is how we sing, everything we bring as we do ring the new paradigm for which we sing.
What up, George Lantay? Freestyle. Wow, dude, that was insane, man. Sick. Wow. And how did you start it? When did it start? When you was like, oh, you're gonna freestyle? Did you start learning rap songs and repeat them, or it was straight away freestyle?
So that's a great question. So I actually learned this spontaneously while in Vipassana meditation, which, in case you all don't know, that's a 10-day silent retreat in the Buddhist discipline. So this really shows. So
for 10 days you were rapping in your brain.
No. So I spontaneously, without any practice, without any intention, it just came to me. And this is the power of transformational work. This is the power of being able to go deeply into these emotions, because we can actually unlock parts of our brain. We can actually unlock parts of our genius, right? I had absolutely no intention. I had just been in India, and there were a lot of people freestyling around me. And I was like, wow, it's so cool. I want to be able to do that. I did absolutely no practice. I think I spent like one day for 1 hour just like writing, just like some song lyrics in a journal. And I was just sitting in meditation for, a full day. And then the next day around lunchtime, I was just like rapping in my head. And I was like, wait, am I rapping in my head? And I just started because I wasn't allowed to talk. So I was just like whispering, rapping. I was like, oh my gosh, I can rap. And so this just shows it's like, even when we're practicing, it's not actually about, the practice and the repetition, because people can do something a million times and just be doing it the same way each time. The same it's way actually about that growth, that way that we're leaning past those emotions of fear into a place where we can find that comfort and that integration. So that's just a small glimpse.
That is really cool. That is really cool. What do you think about the concept of that people use only 10% of their brain, and that there's just so many different ways to actually unlock more than 10%? Yeah. And that's probably one of the ways to do it. Meditation, what was the... intelligence. What was that the word?
Emotional intelligence. Yeah, exactly. And I think the 10% thing, if we're talking about a scientific level, I think that people were like, oh, that's not, a thing for the reason that they thought. But, that is very true, that we are not using the full capability of not only our brains, but our bodies. And we actually have neurons, in our stomachs and our hearts, all throughout our bodies. And yeah, there's so much to be unlocked. There's so much to wake up to.
That is so cool. And this is our second section. Boom. I want to talk to you about psychedelics. So I'm very new with this. I've done my mushroom trip third time last week, and I do really enjoy it. Since you're here in Bali, you hear a lot that you can really learn about yourself more when you kind of go with those psychedelic journeys. And one of the things what I'm kind of annoyed is that how stigmatized it is. How it's so bad to do these drugs and that drugs, and drugs in general, that word has such a strong negative connotation to it. And you would never have the same thing for alcohol, which is, in my opinion, is way worse. What is your take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so first of all, I think that with psychedelics, it's very important to look at the legality of it and just make sure that when we are doing it, it's in a place where it is legal for whatever it is, right? Marijuana is legal in a lot of places now, and then different, medicines that are used ceremonial in different countries can be illegal in those countries. So that's a way to really just help with the energy of it and just make sure that's in a good vibes. That way you're just fully secure when you are using that. And the way to look at it is as a medicine, right? So in these native tribes, when you go to South America and there's these tribes that, do ayahuasca for their religion, right? And for their spiritual practice, it's they would never call that a drug, right? And so I feel like that's a big key. And even, it's pretty amazing how far it goes, because there's ayahuasca, which some people have heard of. And then, even marijuana, right? When using marijuana, being able to look at that as actually a medicine, and not a medicine where it's, this is for my physical health or my pain in this sort of way, or, I have a doctor's note for medical marijuana, but to really look at it as, okay, this is a psychological medicine for how can this actually be used intentionally for a way that I can feel a lot better, right? Because it's all the intention around it. And if you think about how substances are really, they're activating different parts of our brain. And if we're doing that in a way where, we're not being very conscious of it, really what's happening is you can look at your emotion as energy, right? That's why it's called emotion, energy in motion. And it can literally be looked at the same sort of way as atoms are forming molecules with this different energetic connection, right? That's literally what it is. We can think of ourselves as these, bigger atoms that are doing the same sort of thing. And so psychedelics are making that energy go wild. And so it's like it's so important to be able to cultivate that. And so for me, whenever I sit with a medicine, I'm very deep about my meditation. I'm very deep about the contemplation. And that doesn't have to mean that I'm, not having like a good time and doing all of this. But if I am going to have other people around, I'm going to want to make sure that energy is focused in whatever way. I'm going to want to make sure that everything that's like really, really good is coming up, because otherwise psychedelics can cause these really up and down experiences. And it's also really important to be able to look at, the way that we are using psychedelics as well as other practices to keep us stable, right? So definitely, if somebody does a plant medicine, that is one of the fastest ways for them to wake up, for them to start to feel these things, start to think these things, to start experiencing these things that help them realize that there is more to life. However, it's practices like meditation, like yoga, like qigong, like, different forms of embodied movement that help people actually continue to have that frequency like over a long period of time, because otherwise I think that definitely people can get very lost in the medicine path. And the medicine path is something that can take people into a place where they depend on that for these states rather than being able to get to that place regularly. And people, like for me at this point, having been in this world for over 10 years and doing so much inner work on myself, right? People can think that, I'm on some sort of medicine like all the time. I'm like, actually, no, it's just like how I am, because I'm able to tap into those states and just tap into that bliss just because of the way that I can use meditation and these different techniques to be able to experience that even without those medicines. So
you're like a Patch Adams from that film. You have excessive happiness.
Yeah.
and that is wrong. You have to be sad all the time. You have to be concerned and depressed. Here's some pills for depression. I was wondering, so with like alcohol, for example, you're not going to hear very often someone saying alcohol could actually be used in a positive way and some for like a journey or something like that. Even though alcohol has been used in a lot of ceremonies and religious wine and all that kind of stuff. But I recently was reading this book called was it Tribe? Was it Tribe or Sapiens? Tribe or Sapiens, one of them. And they were talking about that they used to put certain psychedelics in the wine when they did their ceremonies, and that would increase that sensation or that feeling what they had. So it feels like psychedelics being used for many, many, many years, and before even alcohol was considered to be a thing. And it's just one thing is sad about how we don't have that information and knowledge. Like where I'm from, if you say someone like mushrooms, or you say something about what other we have, crystal meth. That's kind of a very bad one. but it was always demonized. Even smoking weed would be very demonized, saying no, this is bad, but alcohol is good and coffee is good and cigarettes are good. And what can be done in that perspective? Because people are getting smarter. We're getting more documentaries. It's like one of them was Joe Rogan was taking a big part in it, called The Union. So they were talking about that weed is actually the reasons why weed was forbidden or shut down in the United States was mainly it was economical reason. It was nothing to do with actually that people were getting high and having a good time, because it was the cannabis plant and all that kind of stuff. So what is your take on why it's been taken so much away from society? Because again, we can say like, oh, if they're gonna start open their minds and they're gonna be more having a free will, a free thinking, then it's kind of a dangerous society, because alcohol numbs them down, and then it's again easier something to control.
Yeah, it is very true. I think that it's all about intention ultimately, with the way that you described how alcohol and cigarettes and these sorts of substances are still in society. Because the thing is, you can even use tobacco in a very beautiful way, actually. Like a lot of native tribes will use tobacco in ceremonies. You mentioned how people will use drinking in certain ceremonies. And so really it's about the way that you're just being very, very mindful of just the way that it affects you, and the way that, the difference of your intention and the difference of your meditation of your emotion while you are utilizing this substance, because anything is just a tool. Everything is just a tool. And so it's what are we creating with that sort of tool? And when it comes to the legality, I mean, there's so many different factors at play. I think that's hard to pinpoint. And for me, for my work, I'm not really interested in saying, okay, like, where is whatever conspiracy or whatever is happening? For me, it's much more of, okay, what's the logical next step to be able to make this something that's really beneficial for people. And I think that ultimately, like I said, it's about being able to just be aspirational towards what it is that we're doing. And it's challenging because, of course, as soon as you open up a market, there's going to be people doing it in all sorts of ways. And we can see that happening with, marijuana, like when I'm in California and I can legally use marijuana with my medical marijuana card. I'll order and there will be, just this branding that's like really, it's very avoidant branding. It'll be called like, I don't mean to rip on this company, but it just comes to mind so strongly. It's like there's this one company called State, and it's like their whole brand is around like being able to feel different emotions based on what type of weed you smoke. And to me, that's really dangerous. It's like you're regulating your emotions with this substance rather than trying to do that with yourself, especially in a place like San Francisco, where for me, there's like a lot of depression and loneliness and anxiety. And so for me, it's much more about, okay, if I were to create a marijuana brand, it would be, something around like, sacred seed or like, like hero smoke or like something like that, where it's like the aspiration is that you smoked this and it empowered you to really drop into this very deep state of meditation, or it helped you really be the creative, expressed version of yourself. And it's that's part of why I love business so much too, is it's creating these aspirational identities, which are what people end up stepping into. And so for me, that's everything that has to do with any sort of substance, any sort of tool. It's like, what are we using it for?
Cool. That's a good way on looking at it. And I think that the biggest struggle for me is to just how small information a lot of countries and a lot of nations have about these certain type of substances. Okay, so a collection of blueprints. So this podcast is about collecting as many blueprints as we can, as many stories, and hopefully inspiring other people to look on your journey and think, that's a pretty cool journey. Maybe I want to have my journey similar to yours. So how would you define your blueprint?
That's a great question. So I would say the first step is to really realize your vision. So really decide like, what is the best life I can imagine? What is the best world that I can imagine? Right? And once you do that, the question is, okay, and then how can I really make that happen? And how can I make that happen in a way that is balanced, right? So if we look at the fundamental principles of the universe, right? I feel like this is actually a good podcast to talk about this. So a lot of people think that the secrets of the universe just nobody knows about, and that we just can't figure out the secrets of the universe, and that the meaning of life is something that's relative and that like we can't figure out. But let me tell you, you can actually figure out the meaning of life. Like I actually know the meaning of life. And like
you figured it out?
Yeah, okay. I actually did. This was actually the thing that I spent the longest time figuring out for myself in my journey. I was doing so much philosophizing, so many philosophical conversations until I got to the point where I actually realized it. And what I've personally found about that, and I will say for something like the meaning of life, it is something that you need to experience emotionally and that you need to see for yourself and ultimately feel. However, what I will say, I'll go ahead and drop it on this podcast. The meaning of life is that you create your reality. And that definition goes so deep. It goes extremely, extremely deep. And the core around that is that you choose the reality you create. You literally create your game. And this is why people can have so much confusion around this, because if you believe in something, your entire world will shift around that thing that you choose to believe. And that thing that you choose to believe will become fundamental, right, to you. And so with that, it's so important to choose what you want to believe, to choose the way you want to see the world, and to let that be an ever increasing and an ever bettering story. And I do believe that to a degree there are fundamental laws of the universe, which I'll start to talk about. However, I actually believe that is the most fundamental law, that you create your reality for yourself entirely, and that you co-create the universe with everyone. And I actually believe that we are actually at this point, I can honestly say I know we are a collective, right? We can think of ourselves as we are literally cells within a greater being, right? And that greater being is this consciousness that is all of us, right? Some people would call it the universe, some people would call it God, but it really is that consciousness. And if we look to the center of the creation of reality, right, which is something that they talk about in science, it's something they talk about in all sorts of religions, right? There was oneness. There was the start before the Big Bang. There was, the one became the many, as they say in the Vedas. In Christianity, they said in the beginning there was God and God was love. And that is basically just that energy, right? And then it split into two. And that's why we have the yin and we have the yang. And that's why we have the masculine and the feminine. We have the left brain and the right brain. And there's all of these parallels there as well. And then from there, those two collided, and that created the source of everything. And so this is a very useful model to be able to look at reality with. And so if you take oneness and you split it into two, right, what you have is you have yin and yang, so you have black and white. And then on the other side, actually something that I've loved looking at for my own brand, because these are my colors, is you have the yellow and then the blue and the red as the three primary colors. And so from that, the model that I've been using is I split that oneness into realization and actualization, right? So that masculine of being able to see the vision, being able to have that consciousness, being able to hold that inside, and then actualization, the feminine of being able to bring that to earth, about being able to create that in reality. And on the other side, for the colors, you have the celebration, right? You have the way that we enjoy life, the way that we raise our families, everything that we do to enjoy, and we have our co-creation, we have our work, we have the business, we have the things that actually fuel everything that we do. And so what we're doing in life is we are having these realizations and we are bringing them into actualization through celebration and co-creation. And both celebration and co-creation are so important, because if you're just working, you're not actually enjoying what you're doing. But if you're just enjoying, then you're not actually building, you're not actually creating anything. And so being able to find this balance in those areas is literally how you create any life that you want, any life that you desire. And the beauty of coaching is that it literally empowers you to get places faster than you would be able to otherwise, right? Something that took someone years, you can get all of those downloads in such a small period of time. And the key is that's not just information. It's actually the energy of what people are transmitting to you from the experience that they have lived. And these are the family level codes that used to only be passed down in royal lines and, different sorts of, dynasties that existed and, very big businesses. And now we can actually give these to each other. So this is a super beautiful world to be in. And taking those leaps, right? Taking those leaps of investment to invest in people's programs, or to be able to buy that plane ticket and just be able to go for it. There is, when you believe in a higher power, which is a very useful thing to believe in, right? Again, you create your reality. You get to choose if there's God or not. If you don't believe in God, no God's going to show up, right? But if you believe in a God, that God's going to show up. And so if you choose to believe in a God, and you choose to believe in a God that has your back with everything, then you have nothing to worry about. And something else I'll tell you, just secrets of the universe, like you are immortal, right? Your soul never dies. That is why people like MLK and Gandhi and these amazing people who were assassinated, they are okay putting their lives on their line because they have so much faith that they are immortal, that they are this bigger spiritual being, and that really their vessel, their body is here to serve in the way that it is here to serve. So all that's to say that you are really the master of your reality. You can make anything you want. You can make any world that you want. And that's really why Heroes of Purpose is a movement, right? Because even though it has coaching at the center of it right now, what we are doing is we are literally creating the foundations for us to have this universal core of, what is this universe that we have, and to bring together other people's universes so we can see, okay, what is each person's ideal reality? What is each person's ideal universe? And from that core, because coaching is the core, it's the core of value. It's the way that we give people the codes directly. We can create all the products. We can create the clothing. We can create the art. We can create the music, which, by the way, art is a super advanced technology to be able to communicate vibes. We can create the table, the cup, the cards, everything around this sort of vibe, and actually, use all of that as something that heals people to be able to be the most happy, express versions of themselves. And this is how we can literally create the best world we can imagine. It's not by, building these massive companies that are just always increasing technology. We have to balance that technology with the spirit and with that emotional and with that feminine side of the emotions and what it is that we are actually living and celebrating, and doing that all in a healthy way, so that way we can be having a ton of fun while also just really nourishing ourselves and nourishing the earth. And that's how we build the best world we can imagine.
I could not agree more, man. That's what I'm talking about. That's a blueprint right there. I love it. I love the especially the balance, the concept of balance. There's a lot of things you were telling me. I told you I kind of follow some of it. But one thing definitely is crystallizing through this is that it's not all about work and it's not all about fun. And I like when you said, when you just have fun, you don't create anything. So what's the point? What's the purpose of you? What is going to be your legacy? Or you're going to be the one who just had fun this whole time, but you didn't kind of chip in with your talents and with your abilities. Because I believe, and I really like this from Will Smith, what he said, was basically that when he was struggling to figure out what he can do or what he's going to do with his life, his grandma said, put your talents on the best possible use and bring the best what you can to the society. And that's what she said. And he's like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds good. And that sounds good to me. But it's very important to figure out what are your not only talents, but also what you enjoy doing. Because there are people who are good at math, but they don't really like math. And they become accountants and finance directors, whatever, but they don't really like what they do. So that's one of the other things. Listen, this was fantastic, George. Thank you so much for coming over. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having you another time on podcast, because we definitely have more to talk about.
For sure. It's an absolute honor to be here. And yeah, if you enjoyed this podcast, again, I talked about it in the middle, but absolutely. The powerful thing about these podcasts, this is actually just a small opening that we've created, right? This is a small opening in your consciousness. And, it's very easy just to, listen to this sort of thing and then, go back to, the regular sort of life that you're living in whatever way that is. And what you can do instead is you can choose to take that powerful leap. You can see this as a portal. You can see this as a portal to be able to completely change your life in every single way. And so I'm sure that there will be an amazing program coming out of this podcast as well as be able to make that happen. That's a business model thing that we can talk about. Hey. But then for me, right, if you are someone who's wanting to step into yourself as a coach, as someone who is a guide, as someone who also has these sorts of wisdom codes, who can really guide people into a better place, right? Again, I would highly recommend you have that conversation with me, and I can empower you to grow your business in a way that is not only, very sustainable in the strategic sort of sense, but in a way where you are actually celebrating your business all the way through, where you are actually feeling super in alignment, where it can feel effortless, and where you are actually moving towards this better world that you are wanting to create, and where business and life just intertwine in such a beautiful way, and it just becomes absolutely amazing. And we have a very grounded approach to do that, right? All the way from you figuring out your life-changing value, you figuring out what that thing is that you have to offer, all the way to enrolling people into these high-end life-changing programs. And in terms of being able to bring in your ideal clients consistently, we take you through all of that. So happy to offer you that conversation where we'll go super deep. We'll see exactly where you are now, exactly where you want to be. I'll map out a strategy for you of how you can get there. And if it sounds like a good fit to work together, we can make that happen, and we can absolutely create this life-changing result for you. So super looking forward. And yeah, just again, send me a message about that on Instagram, George Mason Lantay. Drop an emoji in these comments too. And yeah.
All what he said. I'm pretty sure next time I can just leave my doll here and then write down a couple questions, and George is going to go with it. But awesome, man. Thank you so much. That's it.